All right. I'm Jake Ellenbogen coming to you live from Bleacher Report here. The Rams just got shellacked 41-0 by the Denver Broncos, but the good news is it is just preseason. However, there are winners and there are losers, and there were a lot of losers in this one. So I won't waste any time. Before I do get into that, however, if you like any of my content, you can go check that out at JK Bogan on Twitter. I have a link tree in the description, and I'll just make everything easier. It's all right there. Or you can Google Jake Ellenbogen, and you will find some things. So let's dive right into it. I think the biggest loser right off the rip we're going to talk about is Stetson Bennett. I have been very complimentary of Stetson Bennett. I really liked what I saw out of him the first game. The second game, when breaking it down, I found this guy had way too much protection in that second game. The offensive line played really well, and I just didn't see enough out of him. I thought that he let a lot of throws on the field go. And then this game, especially to see 2 interceptions, I think the big problem and why it's not just preseason at this moment in time for Stetson Bennett is because the Rams have run into a little bit of an issue here. If Stetson Bennett cannot be that guy that we were expecting him to be, then that is going to lead to some problems. And the reason being is you have Matthew Stafford, who's coming off of a serious spinal cord contusion last year. He's had injuries in the past. You are as good as your backup quarterback is. And right now, the Rams don't really have a good backup quarterback between Stetson Bennett. He could be in 2024, but if you think he's ready after this game and the game prior for it to be the 2023 backup, I think it's way too much jumping the gun there. And then you look at Brett Rippon. I don't think he had a great day either, but I'm going to put him in the win column because I think he won the backup job over Stetson Bennett today. I think Bennett, they gave him every opportunity to win that backup job. And I think what it came down to is you can't be turning the ball over. If Stafford goes down, we need you to run an offense. We need you to keep the wheels churning. We don't need you to be a difference maker. We don't need you to take, the league by storm, but we're going to need you to play smarter football. And that's simply not what Stetson Bennett did tonight. It's why he was pulled early on. And I think he was actually pulled in favor of Rippon, because I think they wanted to be able to have a quarterback right now. Stetson didn't feel like that to evaluate the other receivers because the Rams still have decisions to make in that room. And so it's a tough call here. I think they both make the team. I think the Rams are ultimately going to keep all 3 quarterbacks, but I think Bennett's a loser today because I think he was penciled in as the backup quarterback behind Matthew Stafford as a 4th-round rookie. And now you see Brett Rippon, who's a winner in this sense, didn't look great, but he didn't throw any interceptions, didn't turn the ball over, and somewhat moved the ball in a just complete nightmare of a scenario. So I think when you look at that, that's what makes one a winner and one a loser. A winner for me in the running back room is Ronnie Rivers. If this guy doesn't make the team, I don't know what else he could have done at this point. Rivers went 6 carries for 32 yards. He's been a model of consistency. It hasn't all been there for him. It's not like it's been easy running the ball for Ronnie, but what Ronnie has been doing is making the most of his opportunities. And we've seen that from him time in and time out. If there's something not there, Ronnie Rivers will make a play. He will be able to break a tackle. He will juke a guy out of his shoes. He is going to try to create yards that simply aren't there. He doesn't sit there and pout. He doesn't dance in the backfield. He makes things happen, and that's what you want to see. So I think Ronnie Rivers is definitely a winner. He's been a winner every week. I think he better make the roster. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what they're going to do there because I think he's definitely the 3rd best running back in that room right now. In addition to that, I'd say Austin Trammell is a big winner tonight. Look, he might not make the roster, probably won't make the roster, right? But he was the only one that showed any sign of anything that could be considered a receiving threat in this game. Now, is that necessarily Tyler Johnson's fault? He ends up with 6 yards receiving, or Lance McCutchen with 7, or guys like that, Davis Allen with 6. No, I think it was the fault of the quarterbacks, but Trammell made the most of it. It does not matter where you're playing, how much you're playing. It's all about coming out and proving that you can play. You can make things happen when, things don't go your way. And that is something that I felt Trammell did very well. The catch and run, obviously, for 27 stands out to me. I thought he was a big winner tonight in the 55 yards, 5 catches realm there. And that's something you like to see because he's been around the team now. This is his second year. He's not making enough noise where you have to worry about keeping him because he'll get, plucked in waivers. I think he gets through, and I think he's back on the Rams practice squad for yet another season. But who knows? You have a lot of these coaches leave, like, all sorts of coaches that have left, like a Kevin O'Connell, went over to Minnesota, and, you have Thomas Brown over with Carolina. Who knows? These guys got a chance to see some of these players, so it might be harder to keep players than it was in the past. That's something to keep in mind. Moving forward here, I just want to give a shout out here, and obviously, I would say he's a winner in the I'm looking for it there in Cam McCutchen. Okay. Look, the stats aren't really going to show much right there. He had 2 tackles. But what I saw today is somebody that fought. He fought hard. I thought he outplayed Robert Rochelle, a guy who's been on the roster 2 years now. I thought he outplayed Robert Rochelle. Is Cameron McCutchen going to make the roster? I don't know. Currently, I have them keeping 4 corners, and Rochelle and McCutchen don't make the roster. But I think he's a winner because it wasn't just last week. It wasn't just a lucky thing. He played up to what you would expect or what you would want. And so I was really impressed with Cam McCutchen to keep that going, keep that tenacity, that mentality, and, have that, on the boundary there at corner. Another winner, guy who, again, the stats aren't really going to show much at all, Desjuan Johnson with 3 tackles. What I saw is a guy who's got a motor that doesn't stop. He was Mr. Relevant, and I think he should have been drafted higher personally. But when you watch Desjuan Johnson, this guy was constantly just fighting his way to get to the quarterback, putting some pressure on him. It was from the get-go. So he's somebody wearing that number 94 that maybe you might have overlooked. But I think that he really had a good game. I think he's had, some good games here that have kind of gone under the radar. But look out for Mr. Irrelevant. I don't know if he makes the team. I think he'll probably be a practice squad guy, but Desjuan Johnson had looked pretty good. I think he's a winner today. And look, another loser here today, and it's unfortunate, but this is the way it is Lance McCutchen. This is probably Lance McCutchen's last run with the Rams. Lance McCutchen is the all-time preseason leader in receiving yards for the LA Rams in their history. And it's a shame to see him go out like this when this is somebody that had 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards against the Chargers. He only had 7 yards on 1 catch, 3 targets. McCutchen has no doubt can play in this league. But the problem here is that the Rams have a logjam at wide receiver, 6, 7 guys that they're going to keep. They're not going to keep 8. They're not going to keep 9. And so I think Lance McCutchen, you were hoping, and unfortunately, this again goes back to the quarterbacks. He's a loser here because he's not going to make the team, and he wasn't able to really put a lot of film out there. So a lot of teams are going to have to divert back to his last year's preseason, which isn't necessarily where he's at right now. Doesn't mean he's not a better player right now because he's learned obviously from his, mishaps and so forth. But it's year-old preseason film that doesn't necessarily bode well for Lance McCutchen. So I think, he's a loser here. And another loser I'm going to mention straight up is going to be the kicker here. And I'm trying to find him right now. Tanner Brown missing that 39-yard field goal, the Rams' only chance of getting on the board. Look, the Rams are going to have a serious conversation about a few of these positions. But one that we obviously can sit here and say that they will be having a conversation about is the kicker spot, because they decided they were going to go out and get a veteran. They were going to go out and get a UDFA. And Tanner Brown is somebody like, look, he looks good last week. He didn't look in week 1. This week, he missed his only attempt. And because of that, the Rams got shut out 41-0. Is he the reason they scored 41 points? No. But is he the reason that, he basically missed a 39-yard field goal and they had a chance to put 3 on the board? Yes. So Tanner Brown shanking a 39-yard field goal, there has to be more consistency here. And I think what we've already seen with Sam Sloman back, 2 years ago, is that the Rams, they're going to need a kicker. They decided not to pay Matt Gay, who is, Pro Bowl, all pro caliber kicker. They decided not to pay him. And so they need to have a good idea in mind of who is going to replace him, and who's going to replace him you're probably not going to get Matt Gay level of production, but you got to have a guy that goes out there and can make a 40 or below yard field goal. And right now, I don't know. I don't feel confident in Tanner Brown. It's not that I have anything against him personally, but there's no way you can feel confident in the rookie kicker that's been up and down. It's the same thing going back to what I was saying about Stetson Bennett. I can't feel comfortable, and neither can you, that this guy would be the backup for Matthew Stafford. I can't recommend that. I can't feel confident in that, because at the end of the day, right now, with Matthew Stafford, his injuries, there's no kicker behind Tanner Brown. You have these backups or backup caliber guys that are going to have to step up. And right now, the Rams, looking at that quarterback position, Rippon looked okay. He's a winner by default. Like he has experience in this league. It's not great, but he's probably going to be the backup. I don't think that made any of you at home feel safe. Dresser Wynn is not going to make this team. He looked all right. I liked his escapability. He's a practice squad candidate. And Stetson Bennett's a 4th round pick who, let's be honest here, he's a rookie. He can make those mistakes, but if you need him to be the backup this year, he can't be making those mistakes. And furthermore, it's going to look tougher when you have a guy who was playing not far away from the Rams, headquarters at UCLA, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson pushing the envelope so much so that the Browns changed their plans and traded away Josh Dobbs, who was going to be the backup quarterback. So if Stetson Bennett doesn't end up being something, and he has never played in a regular season game, so understand when I say I'm not calling him a bust, but there is something to be said. If Stetson Bennett cannot become that backup quarterback or starter down the line, it's always going to be sitting over the Rams' head. You see Aiden O'Connell and what he's doing in Vegas with the Raiders. He was picked after him. And you see the round after Dorian Thompson-Robinson and what he showed for the Browns in preseason. So unfortunately for Bennett, he started off the preseason well. The last 2 games have been very bad. And, that's to say that. But just looking at what could happen, because we're talking about these winners, we're talking about these losers, but what could happen about all this? What could come of all this? Well, Will Grier just had 4 total touchdowns in preseason in a game that he was told beforehand, after the Dallas Cowboys acquired Trey Lance from the San Francisco 49ers for a 4th round pick. He was told he's getting cut. So the Cowboys did, him well. They did him the right way. And they said, look, we're going to let you go out there and you're going to play the entire game. So what did Will Grier do? He had an above 70% completion percentage. He had over 300 yards passing and 4 total touchdowns in a win for the Dallas Cowboys against the Raiders. So Will Grier, will he get traded? I could totally see some team trading him, trading for him that doesn't think they can get him early on in the waiver order. But the Rams sit there at the 6th spot in the waiver order, and it makes you wonder, do the Rams decide to spend a waiver claim on him? Is Will Grier day one, is he the second best quarterback in the Rams room? He'd obviously have to be kept up to speed and, catch up with the offense and everything. But I don't think you could disagree that Will Grier, if he joined the Rams tomorrow, would be the second best quarterback behind Matthew Stafford. I think he'd be more ready than Stetson Bennett, and I think he'd be better than Brett Rippon. So the Rams have a decision to make in that regard. They also have another one to make with the edge defenders, because today I would say the edge room is a big loser once again. They didn't generate enough pressure, in my opinion. And I'm looking at this edge room and I'm like, who's going to get to the quarterback? Byron Young is the only one I feel good about, and he's a rookie. We only saw a little bit of preseason from him. He had a sack that was called back because of a face mask call earlier in week 1 of the preseason. But there is another guy who just requested a trade from the Chicago Bears, Travis Gibson, who had 8.5 sacks a few years ago, was playing in a different scheme the last year and a half, I believe. And so he is requesting a trade, wants to go to a 3-4. The Rams don't run a true 3-4, but you get the point. I think the Rams would be smart to consider making a trade for Travis Gibson, because right now, when you look at the winners and losers of this, every week we're talking about the pass rush not getting there. Now we're talking about the backup quarterback spot. We're talking about the kickers. So I think the Rams, to make it very blunt here, the Rams are going to have to look outside of the organization if they want to ready themselves up for this season. This team is not tanking. So don't think for a second that Sean McVay came back to tank. But if this team is trying to win games this season, it would be in their best interest to go outside the organization, take advantage of that 6th spot on the waiver order, because they never have that. Take advantage of that. Go out, see if you can claim Will Grier, fill that quarterback spot. Go out, see if you can trade for Travis Gibson, right? See if there's anybody else that gets cut that could help out your football team. The Rams have done this well in the past. They got guys like Blake Countess, Marquis Christian, and Darius Williams, and they turned them into starters in some capacity over time. Those are guys they got after the cut downs. So I think really what happens here moving forward is that the Rams are going to look at this preseason game and probably find some things to take away, in a sense, like, okay, we can keep this guy and this guy, but I'm not feeling too confident about 4 or 5 edge defenders being kept. They're going to have to look outside the organization. I feel good about the corner room. I feel good about the safety room. Feel good about most of the positions, believe it or not, even their offensive line, which has held up decently well, aside from a few blunders. But right now, surprisingly enough, the edge room is what I'm most concerned with, and the backup quarterback spot that maybe after week 1, Rams and Raiders, you were thinking differently. Like, okay, the Rams might actually have something here in Stetson, but that was not really the case following the last 2 games. So I'm curious what you guys think. Obviously, drop a comment below. Who do you guys believe in? Who do you think, ends up being the backup quarterback? Somebody on the team, somebody off the team? How is that going to go? Do they look to bring back Bryce Perkins potentially? If John Wolford's cut, do we see a reunion there? Or do they go outside the organization, get a Will Grier or somebody like that? That's what's the fascinating thing, because you are only as good as your backup quarterback. And right now, if Matthew Stafford were to go down, Caleb Williams would probably be the most likely option, and a tank would probably be not even a tank, but like it would just be really hard to win with either of these quarterbacks starting the rest of the season. So that's something to keep in mind moving forward. But that's all I got for you guys. I think really what it comes down to, 41-0 game. It was brutal. It was hard to watch, but you still can take away the nitty gritty. And I think it's an important thing here that the Rams take advantage of this opportunity right now. 6th in the waiver spot. I mean, Denver's 5th. They'll definitely be taking advantage of it, but they're 6th in the waiver spot. They don't need receivers, which a lot of teams are going to flock to. They should be looking at edge defenders, quarterbacks, and, maybe even an offensive lineman for an additional depth. But I think this is a golden opportunity for the Rams to get better right before the season. And they've done well before with a later round, later waiver order, because obviously they're always picking at the end and then they trade away their pick. So since it's based on last year's draft selection, I think they should take advantage of that. I think they will. I'm excited to see what happens there. But yes, guys, I am Jake Ellenbogen. This has been another Bleacher Report live stream, winners and losers following a preseason game. So I will see you guys in the next one, and we'll be talking about the season, and then just like that, we have the regular season. So we'll be doing that as well. So really looking forward to that, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter at JKBogan. And if you guys are interested, I'm also on kick.com/JKBogan, in which I do live streams every week doing film breakdown of the Rams games. So this past week, we just did a Rams preseason film breakdown. We'll do a preseason film breakdown of this game. I know it was 41-0, but like I said, you can always take stuff away from it. So that's going to do it for me. You guys take care, and I'll see you guys soon. Later, folks.